Have you ever wondered how a massive company with thousands of employees and millions of things happening every single day actually knows if it's winning or losing? It's not some kind of magic trick, and it's not just about super complex math. It's really about understanding a language. So today, we're going to dive into accounting, which is the universal language every single business uses to tell its story. Here's our game plan. First, we'll figure out what this language even is. Then, we'll see how accountants are kind of like detectives, sniffing out clues in everyday business. We'll follow the evidence as they build their case file, find out who's reading the final report, learn the rules they all have to play by, and most importantly, see why all of this is crucial for making smart decisions. All right, so picture a business. It's a whirlwind of activity, right? People getting hired, products flying off the shelves, bills coming in. It's organized chaos. But with all that going on, how do we get a straight answer about what's really happening? How does it tell us if it's healthy, or if it's growing, or if it's maybe in a bit of trouble? I mean, a business can't just talk to you, but it can communicate. The big question is, how?
And that is where accounting comes in. Now, you can look at the formal definition from the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. It calls accounting the art of recording, classifying, and summarizing financial events. But let's be honest, that's a mouthful. So what does it actually mean? Put simply, accounting is the system that takes all that business chaos and translates it into a clear, understandable story, a story told in the language of money.
Every great story and every great detective case starts with the small details. And for an accountant, those details are the business transactions. These are the essential clues you absolutely need to piece together the bigger picture. But here's the catch. Not everything that happens in a business counts as a clue. For something to be a recordable transaction, it has to pass two simple tests. One, it has to be an economic activity. And two, and this is the big one, you have to be able to measure it in dollars and cents or, any currency. Let's make this real. Let's look at Mr. Salman's coffee shop. He buys beans for 7,000 rupees. Is that a clue? You bet. It's a transaction. He sells coffee? Yep, another transaction. But what about when he tells his team they're doing a fantastic job? Now, that's great for morale, but you can't put a rupee value on a compliment, so it's not an accounting event. And him watching a movie with his family? That's his personal life, not the business. So for our case file, we're only paying attention to those first two clues. So once you've gathered all your clues, all those transactions, you can't just leave them scattered all over the place. They need to be organized, methodically, to build a story that actually makes sense. Think of it as putting together a financial case file.
So how's it done? Well, there's a roadmap for it. This whole process is basically a step-by-step system for turning a giant, messy list of individual transactions into clear information that people can actually use.
Let's just walk through these steps real quick. First, you identify the business transactions, just like we did at the coffee shop. Then you measure them in money. After that, you record everything as it happens, in chronological order. Next, you classify them, which is just a fancy way of saying you group similar things together, like all sales go in one pile, all rent payments in another. Then you summarize everything into a few key reports. And the final, critical step, you communicate that story to the people who need to hear it. Let's see how this works in the real world. Say Epson Ltd. buys a new printer. They identify the purchase. They measure the cost at 5,000 rupees. They record it in their books. Then, at the end of the period, a manager analyzes the big picture reports and interprets the data and realizes, hey, that printer was kind of pricey. And finally, they communicate a recommendation to the owners. Next time, let's find a cheaper model. See that? We went from a simple purchase to a smart business decision. Okay, so you've spent all this time building this detailed financial story, but who's it for? Who's the audience? Well, it turns out a whole lot of different people are waiting to read it, and they're all looking for different things.
And the audience for this story is really diverse. You've got people inside the company and outside the company, and they are all relying on this one source of truth to make their own choices. Let's break them down into two main groups, the insiders and the outsiders.
First up, the insiders. We've got management who need this information to make all kinds of daily decisions, like, can we afford raises this year? Or, should we launch that new product? Then there are the owners and shareholders, and they're asking one big question. Is my investment doing okay? And of course, you've got the employees. They want to know if the company's stable, if their job is secure, and if there are opportunities to grow. Now, for the outsiders, this group is just as varied. You have potential investors reading this story to decide if they should buy the company's stock. You have banks and lenders looking at it to figure out if it's safe to lend them money.
The government needs this info to make sure it's collecting the right amount of taxes, and believe it or not, even customers care, because they want to know the company will still be around to honor its warranties next year.
Okay, so for all these different people to actually trust the story you're telling, everyone who creates it has to follow the exact same set of rules. You can think of it like grammar for the language of business. And in accounting, we call these fundamental rules concepts. One of the most important rules of the game is something called the business entity concept. All this means is that the business is treated like its own person, totally separate from its owner. What the business owns is not what the owner personally owns. It's a simple idea, but it's absolutely fundamental.
Let's boil that rule down to its essence. Here's what it really means. The business's bank account is not your personal piggy bank, period. That money Mr. Salman spent on a family movie? It had to come from his own wallet, not the coffee shop's cash register. This clean separation is the bedrock of trustworthy accounting.
And all of this brings us to the most important point. We don't do all this work just to have some pretty reports to look at. The real purpose, the whole reason for accounting, is to give people the clarity they need to make smart decisions about the future.
Accounting helps managers answer really important questions. They can look at the profits, look at the cash, and figure out, hey, can we actually afford to give our people a raise this year?
It also helps with the huge strategic questions. Do the numbers truly support taking the risk of launching a new product, or maybe opening up in a new city?
And it helps answer the tough questions, too. Is this service we offer actually making us any money, or is it just draining our resources? Is it maybe time to cut our losses and move on?
You see, without the clear, organized story that accounting gives us, all of those decisions would just be shots in the dark. Accounting is what turns guesswork into strategy. It provides the clarity you need to move forward with confidence. And let's end with this thought from Professor R.R. Gupta. He reminds us that, at the end of the day, accounting isn't just a process. It's the evidence. It's the written proof of what really happened. It creates a record of truth that settles arguments and lights the path forward. So the real question is, what story is your business telling?